Welcome to Still City Growth. I'm your host, Bill Ildenfritz. Each week, we'll explore the passions, expertise, and experiences of business owners and founders in the greater Pittsburgh area. Still City Growth is proudly sponsored by Murphy Business of Pittsburgh, committed to providing exceptional services to meet all your business needs. Let's dive in.
You actually bring up a great question. What is your maybe one or two parts of the Bible that really relate to business owners, like your favorite? What would you? I'm very excited to talk to my next guest. He has amazing insight into a variety of topics. Plus, he's extremely inspirational. Welcome to the show, Mike Hatch.
Hey, thank you for having me, Bill. I'm really, really excited to be with you, brother.
Yes. Before we get into the good stuff, can you take a minute, introduce yourself, your background, why you do what you do?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I am kind of a pastor by trade. The vast majority of my professional life has been in ministry kind of senior leadership in the nonprofit kind of sector, if you will, that combines with ministry. And then I spent several years at Orchard Hill Church in Wexford as a pastor there, a men's pastor, and then left there and then joined Truth at Work, which is a ministry specifically for Christian business owners and entrepreneurs. And so currently I do that. That's something that God was leading me to do even back when I was a pastor, meeting with men who were business leaders and entrepreneurs. And I was just really, really inspired by, we'll talk more about this, but the redemptive impact that I saw these businesses and business leaders having in the community. And so I was drawn to that. And I love people who have skin in the game and a lot's at stake with some of these businesses. Obviously, from a temporal standpoint, there's money invested. They've got to be profitable, but also from a kingdom perspective, from a Christian eternal perspective, as I would say, putting my pastor hat on. And so that's what really motivates me today, is helping to encourage, empower, and equip those Christian business leaders.
Excellent. Let me ask you this. You founded Redemptive Economics in order to empower Christian entrepreneurs to make a redemptive economic impact, which does sound great. But let me say, some people may have no idea what you mean by redemptive economics. Can you define that for us and help us understand how business owners can make a redemptive economic impact?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I think I lose most people whenever I just even bring up the term economics, because I think some people just have this vision in their head of a college professor up there droning on about, supply and demand and all these things that we never understood in college. But it is so much more profound than that. And really, economics is something that affects everybody. We all engage in economics in some way, shape, or form because we are all simply trying to utilize the finite resources that are at our disposal to be able to provide for ourselves, for our family, and hopefully through our businesses, create and produce value for others as well. And so the way I define it is I start with this premise. I say, first of all, that God, again, putting my pastor hat on, through his sovereign will and the power of the Holy Spirit, is accomplishing his redemptive purposes in and through our economic choices. And that's whether we like it or not. So every financial decision, from how we build businesses to how we manage resources, either conflict with or contribute to his purposes. And so redemptive economics means participating in productive economic activities that, number one, add value and contribute to human flourishing. Number two, reflect the materiality of God's kingdom, which just means that as Christians, we acknowledge that we are serving a higher purpose, a higher kingdom, a higher meaning in life as we go about our day to day, whether it be in business or family or with friends. And then lastly, that we promote God's redemptive purposes. And what most people, I think, don't understand is at the very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis, one of the first things that happened was when God created mankind. He said he wanted us to be fruitful, to multiply, to take dominion of the earth. And what he was saying was basically he provided all the raw materials for us. And he says, almost like a father who dumps out the Legos in front of his son and says, let's build together, right? So God provided these resources for us. And we then, as his representatives, in a sense, here in this world, are called to take those raw materials and arrange them, produce, create value for others, bring order from chaos. And in many ways, what we're doing is we are God's ambassadors here, or representatives in a sense. And God is constantly, because we live in a world, as the Bible would teach, is fallen and sinful and broken. We, as his representatives, are called into some of those broken places that the world, that we see in our world, to fill and to fix and restore through our economic engagements, or through our businesses, or through our relationships. Wherever we find ourselves, whatever spheres of influence we have, we are called to fill and to fix and restore, and that's what it means to be fruitful and multiply, ultimately, for God's purposes. So again, we as Christians would say that the Bible teaches that he is constantly redeeming the world. In other words, the Bible teaches that Jesus died on the cross for our sins in order to buy us back, or redeem us. And as we interact in this world, especially as Christians, as his representatives in this world, we are playing a role that the Apostle Paul talks about in his letters. We're playing a role of ministers of reconciliation. As if Paul says we are appealing on behalf of God to others and the rest of this world to be reconciled to God. And so whatever is wrong, whatever is broken, whatever is not right and needs to be fixed, we enter in and we redeem those things, and are kind of, in a sense, vessels used by God to redeem the world. And one of the most powerful ways that I see this happen is through business and enterprise. Without a doubt, that is where I believe God works powerfully to accomplish these redemptive purposes. And most people don't realize that. Most people, especially Christians even, don't understand the profound reality that we find ourselves in and the ways that God can use us.
Yeah, that is great. I love those points. I don't know if all business owners knows there's that connection. So that's actually really perfect.
Yeah.
I'll take a second just to mention your podcast. And the reason why I'll mention that is you have this amazing, so I recommend anybody check out your trailer for your podcast. I absolutely love it. I know I shared that with you.
Yeah.
But the reason why I'm bringing it up is you mentioned, obviously, in the trailer, the past Pittsburgh, all the positive things we've done. Where do you see Pittsburgh going over the next 20 years?
Oh, man, that's a great question. So, interestingly enough, I just read a copy recently of the Pittsburgh Quarterly magazine. I don't know if you've gotten that or not, but I think it's put out by some of the Pittsburgh Chamber of Commerce around the region, the various commerces. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but the editor wrote a great article at the beginning of some of the changes that are happening in Pittsburgh recently, especially with regards to Nippon Steel coming in and buying into U.S. Steel. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, but the jobs that were saved there, and then the vision that they have to revitalize, in some ways, the steel industry here. Crazy. So you have that. Of course, you've got these incredible industries like robotics and AI, which I think will find happy homes here in Pittsburgh. And the editor of the magazine actually said he foresees Pittsburgh eventually regaining that title, if you will, of being kind of the cradle of innovation, right? Back when in the steel industry, and you have the Carnegies and the Westinghouses and those who were Heinz, who were doing incredible things. This was the quote unquote Silicon Valley of the day, and there's a lot of positive optimism right now with regards to these next decade or so here in Pittsburgh. So I think some of those things are really positive. However, I would say this: I do think that we need to be in Pittsburgh here. How do I say this? Pittsburgh is unique in terms of its culture here. We are very diverse culturally, but very segregated in some ways. So you've got all sorts of different nationalities represented and ethnicities, but we tend to live in our bubbles. That's where you get the idea that we don't cross bridges, right? We have the most bridges of any city in the world, but we don't use them because what's the use? We want to stay where we are. And I think that is the one thing that as Pittsburghers, I think we need to challenge that mindset. I think we need to learn how to cross bridges on all sorts of different levels, physically, maybe relationally and religiously or culturally, we need to learn to cross bridges and work together as a city, I believe, to really take advantage of the momentum that I think that we're starting to gain as a region. I think that would do us really good. I think that's probably the one place I would say that we need to work on. Most people, when they come into the city of Pittsburgh to start businesses, one of the things that I hear often is just how hard it is to break in because we're kind of we're insular a little bit and we don't always necessarily recognize or embrace outsiders as quickly as maybe other regions of the country, which might be why we have had kind of a stagnating population here for so long. And so, but there's amazing people here. You know what I mean? And I remember having a guy on my podcast once who was trained in kind of the culture of Pittsburgh, going back throughout history, and he talked about the fact that what we need more people who are willing to lay roots down here in Pittsburgh and take the long game in order to build trust with the community and the cultures that are. And I think when Pittsburgh people realize that you really do have a genuine interest in them and the region's growth and vitality, and like, for example, Nippon Steel, for example, that comes in some ways, they're going to have some, they need to earn trust, right? I think it's kind of just begun. And hopefully they do that over the long run, but on an organic kind of lower level, small business leaders, entrepreneurs, folks like that need to take on that same attitude, I believe, in a long game, because with Pittsburgh's revitalization, it's not going to be overnight. It never is, right? And it's in process. And so, yeah, I those are some of my thoughts on where we've been and hopefully where we're going, because I am pretty excited about where we're going as a region.
Yeah. As a Pittsburgh boy, I sure hope you're correct. I love to see us move on and get back to those times. That's fantastic. And you're so right about the bridges. I think I told you this. My mother, I love her. Yeah. South Hills will not go to the North Hills no matter what, So there are, and I know many people like that. They will not cross those bridges for sure. And I agree with you. I really think Pittsburgh needs to have more like partnerships. Like I know I personally am working on some partnerships with different people, a couple people maybe even who are on your podcast. But, we can work together, and help. It doesn't have to always be competitive. Competitive's great, but there are times when you come together and help, give a helping hand and grow together, which I think then that is what opens up to God in that sense of him helping, people. Any comments on that?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it's so funny. I've had a Truth at Work group for a while in the South Hills, and I also had one in the North Hills. And it was so funny. I would talk about these people. Like I think I connected with Jeff Hancher, for example, an amazing business leader and business coach in the South Hills that people in the North Hills have no clue about. Most of the people I talk to in business don't know because they stay, close to what their own bubble in the North Hills. And I'm hoping to kind of do what I can, whether it be through the podcast or different events, be able to kind of cross-pollinate a little bit more with some of those folks, because man, we've got a treasure trove of talent and wisdom and knowledge here in Pittsburgh. And unfortunately, it stays locked up in these regions. But man, if we can cross those bridges, like you just said, we're going to discover incredible new opportunities and provision that I think God is waiting to unlock for the sake of our region.
Yeah. And I'll mention this too. I have a listing right now for an electrical company in Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
And we had a very close to a deal being done. They're from Connecticut, very smart business people, want to grow actually several like home, electrical, HVAC, etc. So everybody's all excited and stuff. And the deal's not going through. And the biggest issue is when they sat back and talked, they were worried about Pittsburgh, that outsiders were coming in. They thought, and they said, this is like almost their exact quote, your owners are amazing and they have great connections and you can tell everybody loves them. They grew the business and all this stuff because the couple's 70 years old, so they've been in Pittsburgh their whole life. But they said, but my concern is the transition. So we decided not to move forward. So that is definitely a shame.
That is, man, because you lose out on so much of the brain trust, right? That can come in and benefit our city and our region. Yeah, I hate that. We need to be more open, right? We need to be more open and open-handed and have a what I would call an abundance mentality, which fits right in, by the way, to the redemptive economics stuff that I do and the redemptive principles that I teach. And one of them, here, I'll bring it up real quick, because I created this document called the 15 Redemptive Economic Principles, and one of them is that we trust in God's goodness, embracing both an abundance mentality and an enthusiasm to be fruitful and multiply, all of which is rooted in faith, wisdom, and diligence. And again, we suffer sometimes here in Pittsburgh from a scarcity mentality, which I think you can find it goes back to the roots of the steel industry rug pull and that chasm that developed between management and labor. Man, there's a lot of healing, I think, that needs to happen there.
No, I totally agree. Totally agree. So I do think partnerships and God can definitely help Pittsburgh for sure.
Yeah.
So you have a very unique perspective on business. I mean, you were a pastor, you're an entrepreneur as yourself, and so you also coach Christian business owners at your Truth at Work roundtables here in the Pittsburgh region. Based on your experience, what is the local church missing when it comes to business leaders in their congregation? And how do you think the relationship between the church and business leaders needs to change?
Love that question. Okay. Yeah. So I've been in both worlds. I've been in the church world and I've been now in the business world for a while now. And, it comes down to in the church world, it's a business too, in many ways. You need to provide, you need to raise money, there's a lot as a church you're trying to do. And sometimes your viewpoint can become more insular and inward, and you don't look out because in some ways you're trying to be faithful with what God gave you. And so I'm not necessarily dissing the church about this, but what we often miss is the potential for impact that these business leaders are already having in the community, right? So many churches would say they want to impact the community. And the tool, in a sense, and that's probably a bad word for it, but some of the resources that they're missing are these business leaders and entrepreneurs who are out there in the community, and they have spheres of influence that far outweigh just the church's ability to influence within the community. And they're taking these gifts and talents that God gave them to influence and be those ministers of reconciliation. And I think most of these business leaders, these Christian business leaders, what they need most is the church's blessing and say, what you are doing is beautiful and it's redemptive, and we want to do what we can to encourage, equip, and empower you to continue to do that ministry. Because that's the thing that I think a lot of churches miss, is that business is ministry, and ministry is business. And I say that from my own experience, when I used to believe in this false dichotomy where you kind of had the corporate world over here and you've got ministry or nonprofit world over here. And the corporate world is where you go because you have to. And you probably have to compromise values and your faith in order to make the money you need to make to provide for your family. And then you can give that money over here to the church or charity where God's really working. That is totally false. We often live like that's true. Sometimes the church can live like that's true too. Even as pastors, we can fall into believing that false dichotomy when in actuality, these people who are coming into our church that are business leaders and entrepreneurs are carrying heavy burdens, just like the pastor is, and playing pastoral roles even within their business. I would say that as an entrepreneur, business owner, you have this priestly role to your employees, to your customers, to your vendors, everybody you come in contact with. And man, if the church would view it more like that, they would see the potential for impact, kingdom impact, through these business leaders who reside in their church. And so I heard the president of C12 say this on one of my podcast episodes, Mike Sharrow. He said that pastors, what would it look, how did he say it? How would it be different if pastors viewed the business leaders in their church as being pastors of extension sites? around the region. I thought that was an amazing way of looking at it, and that's very true. So I think the relationship between churches and businesses and the business leaders in their congregation need to change, in that I think they need to come together. And I think that the business leader has so much to teach the pastor, and then the pastor can have so much to share and encourage the business leader in the redemptive work that they're doing through their business. But we have to destroy that whole idea of the false dichotomy there, where it's business over here and ministry on the other side. That's not right. It's one and the same. Your business is your ministry, and your ministry is your business in many ways.
Yeah. Do you think that will ever be broken down? Because I will tell you, I sit there, I won't mention any churches in general, Catholic versus, but I do look at that sometimes as a businessman and go, I think there's lines, right? But a business will be able to help you here. And I also do think that us as business owners need some inspiration, some hope. And I think the church, whatever you want to define church as, can give you that. I'm surprised they are not a little more connected. Do you ever see that happening, truly?
I do see some examples of that happening. Yes. So, for example, the one church that I attend, I absolutely love this church. It's a Covenant Community Church in Marshall Township. Yeah, it's in Marshall Township. Pastor John Price is there, and they have done an incredible job of merging the kind of redemptive theology with work and vocation really, really well. And so I love some of the things that they're doing with that. Darren Grove, who's a prominent business leader, he owns TrueFit here in Pittsburgh. He's done a lot of work on the elder board there as well, and they have a great vision for that, and do a great job of encouraging folks in their congregation with regards to that. I've been encouraged to see Victory Family Church up in Cranberry. They have started these monthly, I think they're monthly, kind of business luncheons, where it's out of their men's ministry specifically. So these are businessmen specifically. And they just did, a few weeks ago, did a luncheon at the Regional Learning Alliance up in Cranberry. And it was a great time of various business leaders, very prominent business leaders in the community getting to speak. There was a panel, and they shared from a kingdom Christian perspective, right? Bringing biblical principles to bear. And the room was packed with, 150 or 200 business leaders in the community who were thirsty, like hungry for this kind of thing, right? And the vision that was cast for their redemptive role within their spheres of influence in the marketplace was really profound. So there are definitely churches I see who are doing these things, at least attempting to do them really well. But without a doubt, I agree with you, Bill. I think more churches still need help, and more pastors, I think, need help in understanding how to reach out to and equip and empower those leaders in their church.
Yeah, I totally agree. So I heard that you launched a new online digital course. What's it called?
Yes, the Redemptive Enterprise, 15 Biblical Principles for Building a Profitable Business of Eternal Significance. Yes.
And so why did you create it? And who's really the course for?
Yeah, so the course is, well, ironically, it actually fits right into our conversation as we're having right now, because the course was designed for business leaders or prospective business owners, pastors, educators, or ministry leaders. So, for example, there are three niches I boil it down to. The first one is current business owners. So if you are currently a Christian business owner or entrepreneur who is in the process of building a new business, or either you own one or have owned one for a while, or in the process of building a new one, this course would be for you. It helps to incorporate, again, those 15 biblical principles, redemptive biblical principles that I created. It helps to apply those within their business context. And then secondly, the prospective business owner. So there are a lot of folks out there who I think want desperately to start a business or have a dream of entrepreneurship. They may still be working their 9 to 5, punching the clock, but they're hoping that one day that they're gonna be able to step out and start their own thing. They may have a business plan in place, or they may just still be dreaming about it. But this course would be for them as they're starting to think about how they're going to have a redemptive influence through their business. And then, of course, lastly, the educator, pastor, ministry leader. So anybody who's responsible for mentoring or teaching students, members, or parishioners how to integrate their faith into their vocation. So as if you're a Christian business owner, you know already that business isn't just about profit. It's about purpose and using what God has entrusted to you to make an eternal impact. And so what I do in in the Redemptive Enterprise, the digital course, is I help to unpack those biblical principles to help folks to make a kingdom impact, to learn how to make a kingdom impact through their business. And a lot of this is a lot of it is, I think, common sense in some ways, but a lot of it too, I think business leaders, sometimes they're so focused on the business that they don't necessarily recognize the business principles that you find in the Bible. And some of them need a little bit of uncovering too, because some of them you need to understand some of the historical context. And my training in theology and seminary kind of has helped me to be able to view that and see that in the Bible and be able to bring that to bear for these business leaders so that they can better apply these principles within their context. So
Nice. Yeah, you actually bring up a great point. What is your maybe one or two parts of the Bible that really relate to business owners, like your favorite? What would you?
Yes. Okay. So it's a toss up between two. I'll focus. So first of all, the parable of the talents is one of my favorite ones, and then the book of Ruth, believe it or not, is amazing. Boaz, the story, who's the business owner, basically in the book of Ruth, is an incredible picture of a business owner who has a redemptive impact and has a kingdom mindset. And then just one more. You asked for one, but one more is the Proverbs 31 woman. Oh my gosh, the woman of noble character in Proverbs 31. It is unmistakable and incredible to see her as an entrepreneur and the ways that she goes about her entrepreneurial endeavors. A lot of amazing lessons to be learned in that proverb as well. But I think probably my favorite one is the parable of the talents, because it obviously we've been entrusted with talents and gifts and abilities and resources and money and all this stuff. And what the parable of the talents really gets to is, and I talk about this actually right at the beginning of the first session of my Redemptive Enterprise course, I talk about this. What it helps to uncover for us is it really boils down to, who do you believe God is? Do you believe God is good, or do you believe God is bad? Because what you believe about God is going to dictate what you do economically, or in your business, or in your investments, how you save, how you spend, all these things. If you have a positive view of God, you believe God is good, then you generally you'll see yourself as a steward and not a storehouse. In other words, that these resources that God has given you, that they aren't yours, that they're God's, and that you are meant to manage them on God's behalf. And if you believe God is good, then you're going to be excited to do that. And you see that in the first servant who takes the talents or the gold, bags of gold, literally is what they were given. What it says, he went immediately. He wasted no time. Went like right away to put the money to work, because he was so excited to do this on behalf of the master who he knew was good. The last servant, most people, the way pastors will often preach it, is that he buried the talents out of fear of maybe making a mistake or not doing it right or whatever. When in actuality, that what that passage actually teaches is that last servant believed that master was evil. He believed that he was bad news. And so he actually didn't even want to associate with the money that was entrusted to him. He wanted to disassociate with that. And so he buried it out of not wanting to fulfill the master's purposes, which is why you see at the end of the parable, there's a very severe punishment for that servant. And the reason is because he had a very negative view of the master and did something severely wrong, in a sense. And so that's probably one of my favorite passages, that parable of the talents, because it gets to a core piece, a core principle for all of us. Is God good, or is he not? If God is good, then you are going to be willing to scatter the seed, as it were, without worrying about where the blessings fall. But know that God is sovereignly at work in all of those endeavors that you might be engaged in, working to bring about that fruitfulness that he's called us to do. And he's going to do good things through that, So we just got done talking about Pittsburgh and the region here and all the cool things that are happening, and having that open-handed, generous, abundance mentality kind of approach. When we do that, when we really trust God with these things, man, I think he works incredibly powerfully through that and brings about blessing and provision that we never imagined could be possible.
I love it. You know what? When I met you the one time we sat for talking, I don't know how long. It seemed very short, but I think we was a little while. But I just love the passion you have for what you do, passion for business, but also obviously passion for God and in the church. So I love your insights for sure.
Yeah.
All right, couple non-serious questions. Let me ask you this. If you had to pick forever, either Primanti brothers or Pierogies, what would you pick?
Gosh, and for forever.
Forever.
I am in purgatory with either Pierogies. I would probably pick Primanti brothers.
Yeah.
Because I need that protein.
That's right. You're totally correct.
Yeah.
All right, you mentioned Lego earlier. So what hurts more, stepping on a Lego or watching the Steelers lose to the Browns?
Oh, man. That's a good question. I would say for most Pittsburghers, I mean, watching the Steelers lose to the Browns is definitely harder. The pain seems to last longer. It just sits there for a while and just it does not season well. And I relate to that. I will say that, the pain of a Lego, man, it's like getting stabbed in the foot. I'd go Steelers, Browns.
Yeah. Yes, no, I totally agree. I worked as a nursing home administrator before I got into being a business broker.
Yeah.
And I was up in a couple of Cleveland nursing homes. And on Friday, it was dress down day. And during the football season, you were able to wear football jerseys.
Oh, yeah.
I will tell you, I was absolutely shocked that there were a bunch of people, I would say 25%, that actually in Cleveland that wore a Steelers jersey in Brown territory. When I walked in the first day, I'm like, all right, did you guys just do this for me? Like I'm from Pittsburgh. And they're like, no, we actually like Pittsburgh. I'm like, well, I'm not quite sure you'd be walking through downtown Pittsburgh with a Brown shirt on and saying you love Pittsburgh, Okay.
Yeah, right. Okay, so I got a quick story there with that. If my son and this has been a few years ago now. It might have been, 8 years ago. I took my son to the Cleveland Air Show. And I was carrying, we were walking from the parking garage over to the airport where the air show was. And I had these chairs these fold out chairs, and they were in covers that they were Steeler chairs, right? So they had Steelers logos on them. And I'm walking with them over my shoulder. And no joke, the police officer who was stopping the traffic and guiding starts heckling me about the Steelers. He's like, "Go back to Pittsburgh, you da-da-da-da-da." I'm like, what? This is a cop. Yeah. And my son is sitting here, listening to this guy heckle us. Yeah. Dude, that was the craziest experience, man. That hatred between those two football teams. Wow. Or the fans. Yes. Oh, it is intense.
Yes. And at the end of the day, it's just football, but you're exactly right. It's absolutely funny. And so, Yes, I don't know, growing up, both of us have kids, and you stepping on the Lego, it does hurt but yes, I think still losing to the Browns.
The Legos, the other thing too, Bill, are those little plastic dinosaurs that are super hard. Yeah. I've stepped on those too. Get a claw up your foot. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally agree. All right, so let me ask you this. So if we're meeting for the very first time, what would you want to share with me?
Interesting. Meeting for the very first time, probably my story. And I want to hear your story too. But I find that when you share your story, especially when it's a story about failures as well as successes, I think there's greater connection between each person, right? So I heard a pastor say once that, if we're at a Sunday service and I pass around the microphone and everybody shares their biggest successes and victories, gosh, I mean, people would be looking at their watch ready to leave pretty quickly. But if you pass a microphone around and had people commit to sharing their greatest failures, oh my gosh, we'd all be on the edge of our seat, because that's just one of the things that connects us, And so, for example, for me, I've struggled with an addiction to pornography in my past, right? And that has been a huge connecting point for men who I meet with, because it's something that, especially in the church, you don't talk about a whole lot. And most men, when I do open up about that or other failures that we can connect on, like, it draws you closer, relationally, it draws you closer, and creates deeper connection. So,
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of the things as my drive home from our meeting was just that as a point, we kind of shared different thoughts, both
Yeah.
positive, negative, how to help each other. But, us as men, a lot of times, I'm strong, I'm competing, I'm not going to share those weak moments. But I do agree with you. A lot of times when you do, you actually have a greater benefit. You do bond with that person, and it's a positive.
Yeah, it opens a door. It really does. It opens a door for both. And the other guy doesn't necessarily have to walk through it, but the door is open, And I think it also shows whether just how genuine and authentic you can be. If you can embrace both, those weaknesses and the strengths, man, it makes you a way more integrated human being,
Yeah, I totally agree. If you were able to go back, we'll say in your 20s, what advice would you give yourself now?
Man, that's a great question. I would say, well, at that time, I was struggling with that false dichotomy. I actually had a bit of an arrogance about being in ministry. So I was in youth ministry. I was an area director for Young Life out in Chicago. And I remember having this, I'm ashamed to say, here I am sharing my weakness now. I remember feeling like I was doing the thing that everybody should be doing. Like, I'm not going the way of the corporate route, being greedy and wanting to, be rich and all. I'm foregoing all of that for the altruistic, kind of virtuous mission of ministry and reaching kids for Christ. And I get it. Like, in some ways, I'm not disparaging that. If that's anybody's call, like, absolutely, that's a good thing. But I kind of had this arrogance about it that I wish I didn't now. And I probably would want to sit down with my 20-year-old self and maybe open up my perspective a little bit about the various ways, the multifaceted ways that God works in this world, and humble myself a bit about what I feel like I'm doing. So that's probably the message I would have for my younger 20-year-old self.
Yeah, I love that. Thanks for sharing.
Mm-hmm.
My last main question here.
Mm-hmm.
What do you want your legacy to be like?
Oh, man, I want people to look at my life, and it's going to sound cheesy maybe, but I want them to see Jesus. I want them to see how good God is, because my life is a product of that. Like, man, without God's grace and provision and mercy and unconditional love, gosh, I would not be who I am today. And so, yeah, I just want people to look at me and what I'm doing and how I live, and give glory to God, because He's the ultimate reason why I am who I am today. That would be what I want my legacy to be.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Mike, I had a great time.
Yeah.
I appreciate all the insight. I appreciate the sharing. Before we wrap up, if the audience does want to connect with you and learn more about you or work with you, buy your online stuff, how would they do that?
Yeah, and real quick, before I do that, Bill, thank you for what you're doing with this podcast, brother. I think it is needed. I'm really grateful that you are doing this, and I think you could be a huge influence in the Pittsburgh region in terms of helping to cross-pollinate and bring people together for some incredible redemptive potential and impact here. So thank you for this. I love it. And so first of all, my email, I would say you can email me at mhatch@truthatwork, all spelled out, truthatwork.org. That's my email address. That's the best email to reach me at quickly. You can go to my website, redemptiveeconomics.com, and find out more about the redemptive economics stuff and some of the coaching and things that I do there. And then let me think here. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. I have a couple pages on Facebook, Redemptive Economics and Truth at Work on Facebook as well. But those would be the primary ways I would say to connect with me.
Okay. Yes, and all that stuff will be definitely in the show notes and at the end of the show for any of our viewers for sure. Yeah, and I will tell you, I recommend you sit down with Mike. You need a little coaching. You need to figure out going from business to God and in between. I would definitely sit down with Mike. He has a variety of experience definitely to help you. Well, Mike, again, thank you so much for being on the show. If you found this helpful, please share it with a business owner who needs to hear it. You can save them from many mistakes. This has been another exciting episode of Steel City Growth. See you next time.
That's a wrap on another episode of Steel City Growth. Thanks for joining us. For show notes and more, visit steelcitygrowth.live. Until next time.